Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be re-lent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Well, today I have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Colonel Joshua McConkey. He is the proud father of 3 little Americans. The biggest mission in his life is to help shape these children into the future leaders of America with the help of his wife, Elsa. Together, they reside in Apex, North Carolina. They are part of a very tight-knit family with both Cuban and Irish heritage. Talk about eclectic, just coming in.
Yeah.
The wonderful aromas that emanate throughout the house from cooking times honored secret Cuban family recipes brings a warmth, love, and security that only tradition can bring. Dr. McConkey, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a good intro.
Excellent. Well, listen, I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to call you Dr. Josh. How's that?
Sounds good. Easy.
Well, either that or Colonel Josh.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Josh is good.
Well, listen, I always ask a couple of questions to start off, and that is, what is your favorite style of music? Because I'm a musician.
Oh, great. Yep.
So I have to ask that question.
So my grandfather, Ed Fish, was a musician, played in Seattle. He did play with Ray Charles once. So I grew up, I played the trombone from about 5th grade through high school, and then sadly didn't do anything once I got to college and medical school. Listened to a lot of different music. I suppose kind of rock and pop would be some of the favorite. Listened to a lot of 80s music.
Excellent.
And as far as like some songs.
One of your favorite songs.
Yeah. So when you think about some songs, there's one I've been listening to a lot lately. So there's a collaboration with U2 and Johnny Cash, The Wanderer, if you have not heard that song. Very cool song. I mean, just brings in a little touch of faith. And then you've got just some of the history of rock and roll with Johnny Cash, bring a little country with U2. It's a very cool song.
So listen, you have just an amazing background as a doctor, as a colonel, just all the different experiences. I had the pleasure of reading your book and going through it, and some amazing stories that you have going on throughout the book. And I think it is a lot of life lessons and some really good strategies and concepts, but there's some really engaging stories. So it was really a great read. And so let me ask you, how did you get started? Like, what is it about you that's put you on this journey to live the life that you've been living?
For me, everything, I look through life probably through a different lens than most people. Prior to my service in Iraq, I just, working hard, Came from a blue collar family. My dad was a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader, and so was my great grandfather. So a long lineage of railroad men. I broke that mold. I was the first McConkey to go to college ever. Aunts, cousins, so the first McConkey to go to college. And, so focused on school, working hard. And then my combat service in Iraq really, really changed me.
Right.
So when you see men and women that are sacrificing everything for the people around them, I saw a lot of death, a lot of destruction. I carried the body bags of America's heroes off of those battlefields.
Yes.
I flew medevac. I did one air assault, and it was the craziest, scariest thing I've ever done my entire life. So I'm motivated. I wake up every day. I think about those men and women, and I try to get up and do something to make America a better place and try to honor them. So it's kind of a different outlook on things. I figured out while I was there that nobody cares what kind of house you have. They don't care how big it is. They don't care what kind of car you drive, and nobody cares how much money you make. Those things
Right.
don't matter. If you're not making a difference, then you're wasting your time.
Exactly. It was amazing, again, just the stories that you tell in the book, because you share a lot of your background and a lot of the things that you experienced in life. And again, it was a very riveting book. I think you've gotten some honors that are coming. I know you got some honors that are already there, but you got some ones that are coming. So I think it's going to be a really great read for anyone who gets a hold of your book.
Thank you.
And the book is called Be the Weight Behind the Spear. So let me ask you, what was it about that terminology or that phraseology that allowed you to say, that's the title of my book?
So be the weight behind the spear. That's my personal leadership ethos. I'm a military commander. I've served for 23 years. I've been very blessed. I've worked with some really stellar individuals. And you talk about special operations. I was medical director for some PJs, pararescue, that's combat search and rescue. And when you talk about the tip of the spear, so if you want to understand being the weight behind the spear, you got to understand what's the tip of the spear. That's the people jumping out of helicopters, taking down bin Laden. There was literally a couple of the PJs in our squadron that had served in Okinawa and were on the team that rescued those Thai children that were trapped in the caves. I think 2018, there was a whole team of soccer players that got trapped and everyone thought they were going to die. You pick up a red bat phone and you call one group of people, like this is who responds. So them, and there was an anesthesiologist from Australia that really pulled off probably the greatest rescue in the history of mankind. I mean, the stories were crazy. So that's the tip of the spear. I definitely cannot do those things. I don't jump out of airplanes unless I absolutely have to. I don't take lives, I save lives. And every one of these special operators, they have someone in their life. So teachers, coaches, volunteers, families, so many people that help build them into who they are and give them the amazing confidence. That's the weight behind their spear, because that tip of the spear means nothing if you don't have a significant weight in those people behind you. So that's how I've led. That's how I kind of live my life, and just be the weight behind the spear for something or someone that matters. And, that's making America a better place.
Exactly. Now, in the opening of your book, in the opening chapters, you explore what it seems to be this idea, again, of the weight behind the spear. From a productivity standpoint, how does adopting this mindset shift help someone from being a passive contributor to a high impact performer in a team or organization?
So when you talk about some of those basic skills, you want to be the weight behind the spear for someone or something. And when you break it down to those, just the elements of really what makes good team members, what makes good leaders, talk about accountability, ownership in your organization. Don't micromanage. Like, as a leader, it's my job to surround myself with good people. I can't know everything. I can't do everything. I have to make those decisions and put people in place to be successful. When you make those decisions, then let them be successful. You can't micromanage things. So, you have that accountability side of things, the ownership in your business, in your organization. I think now we see a lot of individuals and just some of the younger generation that have been a little bit detached. And if you don't give them those ownership, and they can feel ownership over that organization, they bail very quickly. And so that'll crush your productivity right there. So when you have a team that believes, and make my ethos, like be the weight behind the spear, ownership, accountability, standards, and not rules. Nobody likes rules. When you talk about standards, people really understand that. And you put that as part of a team, efficiency, productivity, just the buy-in on that, those things are absolutely critical.
Yes, yes. Now, in chapter 3, you write about the confidence of youth. And how can leaders and professionals recapture that boldness and apply it to their productivity, especially when faced with uncertainty or even burnout, especially today with all of the challenges that people are facing with AI and jobs and
Yeah,
layoffs?
it's a very scary environment. So, that's one of my favorite chapters. I've done some book readings like Barnes and Noble, and that's one of the
Right.
chapters I always, do a reading from. So when you look at some of the challenges for like mankind in the United States, the one of the biggest races for this country, you talk about the 1960s space race, where John F. Kennedy, he throws down the gauntlet
Right.
at Rice University, we're going to put man on the moon. Everybody like, wow, that's insane. And when you really think about what was accomplished in the 1960s, and man lands on the moon in 1969 with computers that have less computing power than what we all personally hold in our hands with our cell phones every day. It's just mind blowing.
Exactly.
But that
Yep.
challenge, getting a common theme, giving everybody a common enemy always helps. So, chasing down the Russians was always super
Yep.
helpful. The whole purpose of my book and that ethos, be the weight behind the spears, we are pretty divided generationally and, politically in this country right now. Let's focus on something that we
Right.
can all agree on, right? Building up our future
Yep.
leaders, giving them
Yeah.
the skills to be successful. It's a group that, there were a lot of policy decisions that were made where, there's these younger generation and kids were shut out of schools and they were shut out of churches and they were just isolated on iPhones. I mean, had no contact with the outside world almost for a couple of years. That was not good for them. So we need
Right.
to empower them, find a challenge that we can all agree on. Everyone's got different politics. We can all agree we want this next generation to be successful. So let's
Yes.
focus on that. It's not as exciting as the space race, but if you really look at things and the future of our country, I want to retire. I'm sure you want to retire at some point, right?
Exactly.
Who are you going to hand the keys over to?
Right.
I mean, are they ready yet?
Yes.
As a military commander, I can tell you that they're not. The
Yeah.
things that I deal with every day, and as a prior business owner, I can tell you that. But it doesn't do any good to point blame. I mean, if you want to pass blame
Right.
to this side or that side, it makes no difference. How are we going to fix it? So that's something we can all agree on
Exactly.
and make sure these kids are successful. So
Yep.
I can retire.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, in the book you talk about, and I don't remember his name, but he was a 26-year-old that was given a lot of
Yes.
responsibility around the space race. And when the guys got to, like it was Neil Armstrong on the moon, and whether they're going to land on the moon.
Oh, that is a riveting story, and that
Yeah.
was so there was a BBC series, 13 Minutes to the Moon, and it really chronicles everything, the decisions that were made in
Right.
that time span before they land on the moon. We went to Kennedy Space Center last Monday. My kids are tracked out right now. It's kind of like spring break, track out.
Yeah.
They do year-round school. And so we went, and my kids, they've heard me talk a couple of times. They went to one of the book readings, and my son asked me, he's like, hey, who was that kid from Iowa that you were talking about? Because now it's real to him. You literally sit in the
Right.
the control center, and they literally have everything exactly as it was in the 1960s. And so who was that kid? I was like, Stephen Bales, this 26-year-old kid from rural Iowa who literally watched it was a Disney series on space exploration that got him interested in space. He got an engineering degree. Man, such a riveting story where the average age in mission control that put man on the moon was like 27 years old. It's mind boggling. So they
It is.
didn't, yeah, that confidence of youth, you don't even know that you can't do it. Like it's just that
Right.
confidence where they don't have the biases. So, I'm 47 years old. I've had so many experiences, as hard as I try, I'm going to have some biases with certain
Right.
situations and groups of people. I mean, they're just things that shape you as a person. And they're so young, they haven't had those biases yet. And so they're able to think a little bit outside the box without these constraints of what's happened in the past, because they don't know what they
Right.
don't know, and they don't have those constraints. that they're able to do some pretty amazing things. They literally put man on the moon, and Steve Bales was 26 years old.
Which is amazing.
It's crazy. I can almost assure you that there's probably nobody like really running any significant programs at NASA at 26 years old.
At 26, at 26 years old.
Right now, I can almost assure you.
They're a child prodigy and they went to the military. They, been put in a position at 24 where they have some of those skills. Otherwise, it's not going to happen because, it's not happening right now at the way things are. But that was a really intriguing story as well, that it was not just about the astronauts, right, that were being sent up there, but it was about this kid from Iowa who was put into this really important spot. And I think the point that you were making was he didn't really have anybody else to lean on to make that decision, because he was called on at that particular time to make that decision. Is it a go or no go? And he had to, based on all of his expensive or long-standing training, come up with a decision what he would do.
And there was literally probably no one else on planet Earth that knew more about that computer system than him.
Yes.
And the alarm code that was flashing, you can actually hear the astronauts as they're landing. They're like, whoa, nobody'd seen that code before. And so they're waiting, like literally before touchdown, we either got to bail or we're going to, just carry through. And the entire program is resting on his decision. 26 years old. It's incredible.
At 26 years old. That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, accountability plays a central role in productivity and in your book. Chapter 4, what systems or habits do you personally recommend for leaders to maintain a culture of accountability without being a micromanager or overbearing?
And that's where those standards come in. So standards, not rules. I give my intent. This is what I need to happen for us to be successful. I mean, everybody's got a boss. My boss, like a 1-star general, a 2-star general, somebody above me needs something. And this is what our intent is. This is what I need to happen. I'll get it done. If I have to micromanage them to get that done, then I obviously made the wrong decision. We have to have a change in leadership, and that accountability rests with me. So, when I got to go to my boss and explain, why things didn't happen, it rests on me. So when you're leadership, what I love about special operations is everything is your problem. Like that ultimate accountability. It's not, oh, that's his problem. That's her problem. That's not my department. No, everything is your problem. And when you own it, absolutely. When you own it to that level, things get done and you put a good team around you and you let them make their decisions. And if you're having to micromanage somebody, then you probably need to make another decision and they need to no longer be in that leadership chain and you get someone else. But, that accountability is everything.
Yeah. Now, you do talk about a challenging time that you faced where you saw the impact of drug addiction, fentanyl and opioids and things like that. And you kind of reference a part of Seinfeld where it was the soup Nazi.
Yes. Anybody that watched Seinfeld, the soup Nazi. I was the
the Nazi.
Yeah.
There was no narcs for you.
Oh man, I was the naproxen. I was the naproxen Nazi, and naproxen is the trade name for naproxen sodium. That you can buy. It's kind of similar class as ibuprofen. Because I was opposed to a lot of these opiates, and so in the early 2000s, as a resident, I mean, everyone's heard of Purdue Pharma and the lies and the marketing where they just got so many people hooked on drugs that they said were not addictive, which was clearly not the case. And they've killed literally millions of people. And just the fentanyl crisis alone, we're, killing up to 120,000 Americans a year. I'm an emergency physician in my civilian job, and that's just unfortunately a difficult part of the job that I have to deal with. And boy, one of the first fentanyl overdoses I saw, and I wrote in the book, was heart-wrenching. I didn't even recognize the patient as someone that I saw every single day at the gym because, as the life leaves your body and you turn blue and stop breathing and, lividity and those things set in, you just don't look the same. But man, when I walked in that room to tell the family,
and
I recognized him immediately, and it just ripped my heart out. And we both sat there and cried. And man, this is so difficult. And when you do that hundreds and hundreds of times over 20 years in medicine, It's clearly a problem when you talk about the mental health crisis and our opioid crisis that we have in this country. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't been affected. I mean,
Yeah.
friend, family, coworkers, or one of their family, everybody knows somebody who's almost died of an overdose, intentional or unintentional. And
Yeah.
that's what makes the fentanyl so scary, is it's completely unintentional. We had a death here not too long ago in my community, in a high school kid. And it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah. Now, you also talk about Marsha.
Oh, that was such a good story.
I dug into your book, man. It was
Yeah.
very riveting. And,
And
when you think about the hidden, what I would call hidden productivity killers in toxic environments, where people are doing things like they got to check the box and they got to make things happen.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they're killing the patient or not, they got to check the box.
Man, that was just so funny because it happened, and there was kind of a reputation where you just had to watch that individual quite closely because you were worried about things like that. And come hell or high water, those boxes were going to be checked regardless of how that impacted everyone else around them, or whether the patient lived or died. Those boxes were going to get checked. So I literally walked into a room, and it wasn't my patient, one of my colleagues. And I just see a patient just doing these rhythmic jerks, kind of like bouncing up off the bed at a very consistent rate of probably about 100 beats a minute. Right. And I walk in the room, and she had plugged in and inadvertently turned on like the pacing for a patient who's quite sick, but didn't sync the pacing. So there's literally an R on T phenomenon. Those that watched football, is it Damar Hamlin? The safety for the Buffalo Bills, he had a blow to the chest. It wasn't even that hard, but just at that exact millisecond when your EKG, when your heart's like beating, and then there's a repolarization process. But if you hit it at that exact moment, it just flatlines. Super scary. That's what happened to Damar Hamlin. And so she almost killed this guy probably a couple hundred times, because every time it was not synced. You have to sync it on like a QRS complex, right? That's supposed to be synced, because if it hits on the T, the other way, you're done. You flatline. Like, you literally kill them. And so, man, that was wild. I mean, that's just some crazy ER stories.
Again, I tell you, there were some amazing stories in there that, as I, read through the book and just looked at all the things that you had gone through yourself, and the stories that you told. And again, it's too many to talk about and cover on the podcast here, but I walked away from your book really having a good understanding of who you are and what you stand for. And, kind of like your demeanor and your statement earlier is, we don't have time to talk about what's not working. Let's focus on what we can do to fix things, move forward.
Yeah, and pass blame, or we can argue about that. Like, we don't need that. That's not helpful. Like, let's just solve the problem.
Exactly. And I see that, as we're having this podcast and having this conversation, I see that in your demeanor and in your personality, and it definitely comes out in your book, that it's a no nonsense. You know the science, you know how to execute, you understand the chain of command to get things done, but you also are very compassionate and empathetic. And that's what I loved about the book. I thought it was amazing how you figured out a strategy for your family to move to Australia when some things were happening that you kind of thought through. And then, I love the story where you were looking for, what was it? Was it pumpkin pie?
Oh yeah, in New Zealand. I had no idea that there was no pumpkin pie.
I got to tell you, I really got into it, and I was like, wow, that was really cool. It was like you were going to make pumpkin pie for your Cuban wife, and you couldn't find any, so you had to go get a real pumpkin. And
we could find some pumpkin, and then I just figured out how to bake it and puree it and just do everything from scratch, and it actually is quite a fantastic pumpkin pie that many people enjoy.
Excellent. Well, listen, as we get ready to close here, I got one last question for you, and then I'll ask you about where people can learn more about you and get your book. And that is, again, with everything that's going on in this present environment that we're in, and it's not just here in the US, it's all around the world. especially with the advancements of technology. A lot of people are struggling with the idea of, hey, not only with all the changes that are happening in the government, am I going to lose my job? How's that going to impact my contract? But at the same time, you have AI just growing overnight, just amazingly fast, and just taking over so many different capabilities and jobs that we thought, well, I don't have to worry about that for that job because that's a pretty sophisticated job. We're finding out now that AI can do a pretty good job of that job. And so a lot of people are struggling with, where am I going to be at? Just that internal struggle and feeling overwhelmed. What would you recommend? What would be your advice to people during this time as they look at all of these things going on, and with that mindset that you have of, hey, let's not worry about this or that. Let's just keep moving forward with the mission, but taking in the whole picture. What would be your advice?
So, in the military, we've got a phrase: adapt and overcome. You have to find a way.
Yeah.
Complacency kills. It
Yeah.
kills in business. It kills on the battlefield. When you're when you're comfortable and you're just resting on those laurels and you're not pushing yourself further, complacency kills. It kills workplace culture. It kills businesses. And I've seen it kill people on the battlefield. So you have to find a way to adapt and overcome. And that's just the only thing that's going to be constant in life is change. And so if you don't find a way to embrace that and change with it and adapt and overcome, you're going to get left behind, and it's eventually going to catch up, and you're either, your business, you see it happen a lot, even for me in medicine, I've always felt like, hey, there's no role for AI. People just get on Google and they're looking up there. You can always tell the people that come in after they've been searching on Google, coming into the emergency department with complaints, and there's very crazy, obscure, well, I always ask the question, like, what brought you here? What were you worried about? Because you want to make sure they address why they're there. I mean, it's generally a pretty long wait in an emergency department. It's kind of expensive. And, unfortunately, it's not all emergencies. I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. So you see a lot of things that really aren't emergencies, but they're obviously concerned about something that they thought was an emergency. So that's where communication really comes in. And then you can kind of address why it might not be that crazy random thing that you probably see, like the 3 cases on planet Earth somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. It's like, we're in North Carolina. I mean, did you travel there? I mean, if not, then you probably don't have that. But it's coming. Even in medicine, there's a couple of different. A colleague had showed me a website that you can kind of punch, looking for research and some different studies that help make you make medical decisions. And it's actually been quite good, surprisingly. I don't think it's probably at a place where it can replace a physician yet, but you got to find a way to at least start using it and embracing it, because you don't want to get left behind.
The thing I've learned about AI, because I've studied AI and I use AI in my business and I consult with it with my clients, is that it's not that AI is going to replace your job. It's people who know how to use AI and who know how to work with to take their complex job and give the heavy lifting things that we as humans couldn't do, like to scan through millions of records and identify the anomaly of a cancer cell that is in the beginning stages, where it's able to do those kinds of things now. And then a doctor can get in where there's a human in the middle and can now make a decision around what the AI is kind of.
I mean, just kind of the data mining, and when you talk about productivity and efficiency, just putting yourself in a position where I can have better information more quickly to help me make those decisions. It's really, all businesses are working with that right now.
Exactly. And so I love what you said, which is you have to adapt, right? You have to keep moving forward and you have to keep adapting. And with that, Dr. Colonel Josh, where can people learn more about you and also get your book? Because what an amazing book you've written. As you can tell, I really got into it and I love the stories. And the stories, what I loved about the stories was that the stories, as I read through them and saw, whether it was, you driving and the truck almost kind of running you off the road or things that happen with your family, or things that happen in the military, or the baby flying over the Pacific with this child and trying to determine what height should the plane be at. All of those, there's some amazing stories in your book. And I would definitely say, please, if you want a really good read and to really understand the power of leadership, to get your book, The Weight Behind the Spear. So where can they learn more about you?
Thank you. I've had a couple of people approach and say, I feel like we're sitting around a campfire telling some stories. I thought that was like the best compliment I've got so far. Yeah. So it's available online. I've got the audiobook. There's an ebook and then the paperback. You get it at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, almost anywhere where you can buy books and the ebooks. And if you want to learn more, you can go to weightbehindthespear.com. So WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com.
Excellent. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation. I have enjoyed reading your book and learning about you. And I'm really excited for this podcast to get out there, for people to learn about you and really to pick up your book and to see how they can be the weight behind the spear in their areas and focus on moving forward. So thank you
very much.
Productivity Smarts podcast.
Yeah, and I did just find out yesterday it was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in nonfiction, which is super exciting. So get out there and read it before that first edition is gone, because if I actually win, there's going to be another one coming. And excellent. I really appreciate it, Gerald. It was a pleasure being on the show.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.